Hello, fellow citizens. Today we're going to be making a little insert from a router table. It'll just be an adapter for my router base to attach to and then bolt into my table saw table. The way I've got it now is kind of hokey. I've never really liked it. It's hard to adjust. It's hard to get in there and do anything with. So stick around, follow along. We'll make something, even if it's wrong. This is a piece of 1/4 inch steel plate. It's roughly 8 inches rather, square. Roughly square, roughly 8 inches. I'm going to come in 1/2 inch from the corners and scribe a line on them, mark holes. Now this is, I just squirted some really cheap lacquer paint on there because I don't have no machinist dye, but this works good enough for my purposes. So I'm just going to lay these holes out, and we'll lay out some center locations as well. So I've got my layout lines halfway marked. I can halfway see where they are. So I'm going to use punch for the center punch. And there we go. Okay, so I have drilled through and cleaned, chamfered the perimeter holes here, and we're just going to stop on those for a little bit. After I got those done, I flipped it over and I set my compass to draw a circle about as big as the circle on the inside of this casting. It's not exact, it's not precise, I don't care, as long as I can roughly get this housing centered up. Now, this housing is just a standard DeWalt router housing, or router base. Some period of time ago, I don't know exactly, I can't remember when it happened or when I did it, I mounted this to the bottom of my table. Well, when I did, I put rod in here so that I had something better to hold the threads. It's just a piece of 1/2 inch rod, and it seems like I had to grind it down to make it fit. But when I did this originally, I broke a tap off in here. So this hole, no, it's this hole. This hole is real screwball. So what I'm doing is I drilled a through hole, 1 step bigger than 1/4 inch, countersunk it for a flathead machine screw, and then I screwed this corner down. And then I came over here and used a homemade transfer punched this hole, and then drilled and countersunk. And now we're going to do the remaining 2 holes, if I can find my transfer punch. This transfer punch is just a homemade something or other, and that started off life as a driver bit. I can't even remember, I think it was a Phillips driver bit, and I broke the tip of it off, and rather than throw it away, I've just chucked it up in a drill and went over my little grinder, my little bench grinder, and just spun it in the grill against the rotation of the grinder and very gently ground down until it fits right down through a 1/4 inch nut. And that makes me a really nice little 1/4 inch transfer punch that cost me about 30 seconds of labor, well, a minute and a half of labor to make. So here we go. We've got our 4 holes drilled and countersunk. Next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this off camera too, is I'm going to take a hole saw and I'm going to cut a hole in the center, a big hole through the center of this. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of patience, and a lot of cut thread and oil. So I'll be back in a minute. So scratch that idea.
Yep.
I just remembered that I've got a flame wrench right here.
Yeah.
And I did not want to tear up a $20 hole saw.
Yep, we didn't want to tear up that thing.
I didn't want to tear up a $20 hole saw cutting this out. So,
yep,
because the drill press goes way too fast. So I'm just kind of developing, using these hole saws to get the right circles. And I'm going to cut these out here. So
yep,
that's easy enough to understand. So here we are back at the workbench, or the table saw table. Now I took a ring, cut this out with the torch, ground it kind of clean, and drilled and tapped for 3 1024 machine screws in there. And I just took a piece of plywood, a piece of 3/8 plywood, because this is a 1/4 inch sheet metal. 1/4 inch plywood is not a 1/4 inch thick. It's about 195 thousandths. So anyway, I drilled and countersunk for machine screws in my 3/8 plywood, and stuck her in the hole and just stuck it up against the stationary belt sander. So that's how we've gotten this far. And this just makes me a nice replaceable zero clearance insert that I can hit with the router bit and not have to cry. So there's that. And you can see I took my jumping up and down saw and marked out a hole for my router base to clear here, and then cut the hole out. And God Almighty, I hope I put the hole in the right spot, because that really made me nervous, cutting a hole in the workbench or in the table saw table. So to generate my hole there, I found this laying in my drawer of goodies, and I have no idea where this came from. Just a piece of a little bit shyer than 8, maybe 14 gauge steel, and it's got 3 holes evenly spaced on it. And it was in the same drawer with some router stuff. I'm thinking maybe it was part of some kind of router fixture in the past. I don't know where it came from though. But this is the template that I've used to make my insert. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I ground and filed this hole in the steel plate to match this template very closely. And I use this template to space my holes. So by doing that, it's really easy to make more inserts. Always, when you're making stuff like this, always make a steel template or heavy gauge aluminum, but preferably steel template to make your insert with, because you're going to want more inserts. And this is really easy now. Just trace with a pocket knife around here and scratch in a line and cut it out and bang, now you've got an insert that takes 5 minutes to make, and it fits perfectly, or as perfectly as it can get. So there's enough on that. Okay, we've got it bolted down to the table with 2 bolts. I laid me a straight edge up here on the front, kind of tried to get it lined up with the T-slot, or the slot here. It's not ultimately the most important thing if it's a little bit crooked, because we're not really going to ever reference off of this plate anyway. It's mainly for appearance sake. So right now I'm going to take my chisel and my wacky stick, and I'm going to go through here and I'm going to just stake in the edges and try to cut through this 1/4-inch Luan plywood, mostly with a chisel. It'll just give me a nicer edge when we get on down the road. So here we are back. Y'all see me put some acetylene soot on the bottom of this thing, and I've had it in and out a time or two. We're still about a half a 64th or maybe a full 64th high right in the middle, but I kind of expected that. You can see by the sanding patterns here, when I welded the ring on the bottom of my plate here, it humped up, it pulled, and it warped this slightly in both directions. And I kind of planned for that and expected it. So I've got this thing fitted pretty good. I'm going to take it out and clean it up now. And here in a minute, we'll get the little transfer punch back out, or a magic marker or something, and I'll transfer all these holes down, and we'll drill the bolt holes. I'll be back in a minute. This here is just an old drill chuck from I don't even know where, but I don't even know where this old taper shank came from, but this old taper shank screws into this old drill chuck, and I really don't remember honestly where either one of these came from, but I kind of keep this around for holding stuff like this and to grind the ends off. I mean, you can get a hold of this when your studs are 6 inches long. They're not hard to get a hold of and grind. But on a little bitty old short stud like this, this works excellent to just reach in there, and I mean, you don't want to really crank down on it because you'll goober the threads up. But this works marvelous just to take them burrs off on the grinder. So I'm going to go deburr all these and get them cleaned up, and then we'll be back. Okay. So we put all our studs in, test fit them, dropped it in a hole, it fits, and it comes back out. So now we're going to fix our studs in there permanent. I'm going to use a little red Loctite. I don't know what the part number is. You know what red Loctite is. So I'm going to use a little red Loctite, put a little diddly dab on the end of the stud, stick it in the hole, and then I'm going to stick the assembly in the bench, and I'll take my center punch and put a center punch mark in the middle of each one of these studs to help lock them in the hole. After I get that done, then I'll grind it all back off flush. We'll be back in a few minutes. Here we are. I've got my studs all staked into the holes here, ground off flat. I took a flap wheel and kind of cleaned up a little bit on this, got all the paint off of it, degreased it with some lacquer thinner, and I've got it sitting right now soaking in a tub full of Osfo. It's a phosphoric acid solution. I don't know what all is in it. It's just really a rust converter. It's not made to do this with, but I use it to, I wouldn't say cold blue, but I use it to cold blue my stuff. And it's also marvelous stuff for taking these nickel or chrome or zinc plated fasteners, whatever they are. I don't know, I guess they're galvanized. And you can take these galvanized fasteners and soak them in here, and they look good when you're done. You know, it cooks them down to bare steel. So, and this is just a quart mixing tub with about 1,000 holes drilled in the bottom of it. And I use these a lot for things like this and washing small parts, washing nuts and bolts. That works out good. And I'll let this soak in here for a while. I'll come back and look at it periodically. You don't want to really leave it setting more than a day. If you do, it really etches into the metal a lot. I mean, you want your metal etched, but you don't want a pitted surface. Well, I guess unless you want a pitted surface. But you can see, maybe, you can see little bubbles forming. This has been in this tub for about 20 minutes, no, 5 minutes. And you can see little bubbles forming all over the surface. There's a whole bunch of them right there. And I mean, it's phosphoric acid. It's going to eat the steel, eat the rust, eat the everything that's on there. And when you pull it out, wash it and dry it, it will have a very thin layer of black oxide on it. And then you oil it, and the oil soaks down and penetrates into that black oxide and gives you a really nice finish. I like the way that it looks. And you can see I didn't bother really to get every bit of the mill scale off of there. So we'll let this cook for a minute, and then we'll be back. So this has been soaking for, I don't know, 20 minutes. We went inside and watched some cartoons, but you can kind of see a few bubbles on there. And when I tap it, they really come up to the top. So anyway, I'm going to pull this out of here. I should let this soak overnight, but I'm in a hurry. So we've got this little project about wrapped up. Here's our insert setting in the table. We've got our zero clearance insert in there. I took a 5/8 pointed bit, put it in my router, turned it on, and just ran it up to drill the hole for the bearing to go through. And then I put this 1/2 inch roundover bit in there and just ran it up slowly and let it cut its own clearance. The whole purpose of this is to keep, well, it kind of helps with tear out. It kind of helps with the sawdust and the shavings going down in on top of the router. I don't like that. I will probably hook my dust collector up on the back side of this to where it's, collecting dust, keep it off the top of my router. But I really don't like the stuff going down. I want it to stay up on the top to where I can blow it out of the way and get rid of it, rather than run the risk of something plugging up and me clogging my router all to thunder. You know, if you get a bunch of stuff on top of your router, it's not a good thing. But here's a before and after on the Ofaso Osfo stuff. This is what this bare shiny metal looks like. This is mill scale, and this is about 20 minutes in the stuff. If you leave it in there overnight, pull it out, clean it, and oil it, it'll be almost black. But I kind of prefer the dull gunmetal light gray finish over shiny or black. I like it like this, and it's kind of mottled. There's some darker areas in the corners. It's a little bit different looking where the mill scale was that I didn't clean up. The Osfo did eat the mill scale off. But I prefer this color. That's just personal preference. So that's going to wrap this video up. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments. Please like and subscribe and share and tell your friends, and get out in the shop and tear something up. Y'all have a good one. Watch for deer.